This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Commerce. The veteran's name is John Wardlaw. He was born on June 18th, 1923. He served in the Navy during World War II. He achieved the rank of lieutenant junior grade. We're recording this on March 14th, 2014. I'm Will Hines and I'm conducting this interview. No relation. So Mr. Wardlaw, if you could just start out kind of telling us your life before the war and where you were in college and that kind of stuff.
I went through the Spartanburg schools until the last 2 years, and I spent 2 years at Darlington School for boys in Rome, Georgia, then to Davidson, and I spent 2 years at Davidson.
Davidson College.
Yeah, Davidson College. And at the end of 2 years, I transferred to Georgia Tech. Seems like my science and math and these sort of subjects were a whole lot better than some of the other German and some of the other subjects at Davidson. So I transferred to Georgia Tech. It was when we started going year-round. So I left Davidson in May of 42 and started Georgia Tech in June and started a year-round service. I was at Georgia Tech until October in 1943, but prior to that time I had enlisted in the Navy under the SV-7S program and was a midshipman at Georgia Tech. I really had a hard time getting into the Navy or the Army. I wanted to do one or the two, one or the other, but my eyesight is bad, so I could not pass the eye test. I went to a physician in Atlanta who put me on an exercise program to strengthen the muscles in the eye, and sure enough, it did improve, and I was able to read 8:20. I got 8 feet from the 20-20 line, and then was able to read that, which was the minimum requirement.
Wow.
Incidentally, later at midshipman school, they said I should read 12:20. I should be able to read from 12 feet, what a normal person would read at 20. But I got by, I got by at any rate, and they passed me for midshipman school. I stayed at Tech, as I say, one semester.
And this
As
is
a
in
V12
this is in
program.
1942.
Yeah, this would be 1940, 42. The fall of 1943, I guess. Yeah, fall of 1943 is when the group from Georgia Tech left and was sent to Notre Dame for midshipman training. I then, after getting my commission, I was assigned to go to Harvard for 4 months as a communications training program. And may I just say that, the Navy is pretty good on training, on their training things. Midshipman School was a good school at Notre Dame, the Harvard School on the communications was quite good.
And what did you do when you were training for communications? What did you learn in that training?
What communications officer did was to supervise all of the signals that all of the communications, usually from Pearl Harbor, where they would send out, dots and dashes, and there would be a radioman that came in my division, and they would copy these messages. Also, it's my duty to break those messages. We had they call electro-coding machine.
Wow.
Now, I guess it's all right to tell you that after 60 years, but we had this thing, and we had a code. We would set up devices so that they were set in a certain way, and you would type in this gobbledygook that came from Pearl Harbor and get English out the other side. There were also other, they were lower level transmissions that some of them would come and you'd use another device, those sliding bars and this sort of thing to break these messages. So that's mainly my duty. I also supervise the other signal part of the ship, which would be the flags, the semaphore, the flashing lights, so anything to do with the communications of that ship with Pearl Harbor or with other ships came under my command.
So after Harvard, kind of where did you go from there?
All right, Harvard, I was sent to Naval Air Station Alameda, right across the bay from San Francisco. And surprisingly, I was there for perhaps 3 months. It seemed like all of those that went out with me from Harvard, there were a number of us that had the same assignment to go to there. All the rest of them got ships, got on board, and I was there for 3 months or so before they got this assignment to go on board the Fleming, the DE number 32, which was in Pearl Harbor. And so I went to Pearl Harbor and reported on board that ship.
And what did Pearl Harbor look like at this time? Was there still wreckage from the attack, and were they still cleaning up, or?
Yeah, there was still, a lot of wreckage around that you could see, but they had an active Navy yard, and a lot of ships going in and out and being commissioned or overhauled or whatnot. It was an active place. Strangely enough, the first day on board, and all of us were sort of first ship people, I was sitting in the wardroom talking to a fella, and where you from? And I said, Spartanburg. He said, I'm from Moore, South Carolina. So, I was in the fellow, real local guy.
Right.
And his name was Tom Moore Craig. Wait a minute, let me make sure that's right.
That's him.
Might have been just Tom Moore, I gotta get them confused, but he came back and he died a few years ago. But at any rate, this ship with green officers on it left Pearl Harbor, went to Eniwetok, went to Pearl Harbor, left to Eniwetok Atoll, and then escorted ships from there to Ulithi, and did this for I don't know how long. I guess it was a year and a And then Okinawa came, and I joined the force which went up to Okinawa. We were on the invasion day was called Love, and we went up at Love -10 or something of this sort in order to be the radar and sonar protection of carriers that were bombing the mainland. Now after the invasion, there was a radar screen, and we were part of that radar screen, and that's where we ran into these kamikazes who would come in and try to run right down your stack and blow the ship apart. Mm-hmm. And they did some. We picked up some sailors from the water, brought them on board ship, and got them back taken care of medically. And we had a doctor on board.
Did you see, did any kamikazes come towards your ship, or were they going toward the carriers, and did you see all this?
At this point, they were coming toward our ships, the screen there. And one time they did look like they were coming at our ship, and we shot, we had 3-inch guns, we had Bofors, which were a smaller caliber, but something that you could have a lot more shots coming out of these than your kind of 3-inch mm-hmm. gun. Incidentally, this is a destroyer escort. Now that's a smaller ship than the destroyer. The destroyer usually has 5-inch guns, and as I say, we had 3-inch guns. It was a shorter hull type ship, and I think it really was designed, and maybe it was built in Canada. These are British DEs from Canada that we used.
So do you remember seeing that kamikaze coming toward your ship? We
were all, when they were called battle station, my battle station was in the decoding room, where, decode message. We were having messages come in, and that was my job to decode these messages. So I was not on deck to see all of these planes coming
mm-hmm. in. Could you feel the vibration of the shooting going on? Was it really?
Yeah. They claimed that we had 21 guns firing at these incoming planes, wow. including machine guns and so forth. It might have been really a stretch there, but at any rate. Mm-hmm. And that was basically it. You would get a little break by going over to a small group of islands called Reto. It was a place that we had cleaned out from the Japs. They were there doing suicide type things before the Americans came, but the other ships had wiped them out or captured them or whatever. And so we were able to get a little R&R by going periodically. We'd be assigned to Reto, mm-hmm. and we could even have a movie on the fantail of the ship at night, which you wouldn't normally do if you're in some danger of somebody.
Right. Did you get your own room on the ship? Did you share a room with 3 other officers, or?
Yeah, I guess. See, I don't know whether there were 2 of us in the room or more. all of the rooms for officers were shared by other officers, except of course the captain and the executive officer. They had their own single ship. On board the ship, we of course stood watches. There were two officers on duty at a time, officer of the day and the assistant. Usually these were 4-hour watches.
And what would they watch for? Would they watch for the tail of a submarine or any type of contact?
No, what we would do is to keep station with the troop ships. That we had a zigzag pattern, and they did too. We would follow a zigzag pattern to try to, if there were a submarine out there, try to throw them off, more or less. So we would take care of that. We also, during this time, of course, this is an anti-submarine warfare type ship, and we did the pinging. That is, we would ping, and if you got an echo, then you have a contact and need to go after that ship.
Did you ever come in contact with a submarine?
We sank what we think is a Japanese sub. It was a big oil slick the next morning, and we caught some sharks and opened them up, and we think that we had human remains in those sharks.
Wow.
But we sent that to Washington for them to analyze, and I think we got a probable, but we did sink a ship.
Did you did y'all drop depth charges? Is that how you?
This is we did have depth charges. In this case, we had what they call a hedgehog. It was sort of a deck that was set up with charges. There must have been 20 or 30 that were fired at one time, and they would go out and fall in a circle and go down, and if one of them hit anything solid like a submarine, while the rest of them would go off. So that was the main offensive force we had.
And it would, how big of a circle would it shoot it out in as?
That I don't know. Of course, when it happens, I'm
oh yeah, you're in
somewhere else in the ship. But I don't know. I would guess that it would be 100 yards or something like that in circle. Or maybe that's too big. Maybe it's 100 feet sort of. But at any rate, we would fire that to the place we thought the sub was, and these would sink, and as they sank, if they hit something solid, well, we then all of them would go off, and in this case, I think we got that sub.
Wow.
Okay.
So what would you do daily when you'd wake up in the morning? Would you?
It'd be a watch. You'd have, as I say, that our watches were 4 hours long, except there was one watch that was only 2, so they didn't repeat everything. And also so as to give those coming off the 4 to 6 watch, I think was, and then they had a 6 to 8 watch, at 2-hour watches, so that the crew and the officers could get something to eat. Go up at 6 and you get breakfast.
How was the food on the ship?
You know, it was not good because of just what it was. It was dried eggs that looked gray,
Oh.
and there was grits that looked gray too. Occasionally you end up in a place like Ulithi, and somebody had some fruit that you could get, some apples or so forth. We had a executive officer who was from California, and he kept talking about, oh, you want to get back and get some Bing cherries, and he just run our appetites crazy, talking about all the good things that he wanted to get back to eat. But that's usually it. You would go on these watches, and they were 4 hours long. When you weren't on watch, then you'd have to check on your area, whether mine, your communications area. We had a code room. We must have had about 5 seamen who were copying these messages from Pearl Harbor, and make sure they were doing their job. So that was more of it. You'd get to a point like Ulithi, and now they schedule things like dental appointments or training. They'll send you to a ship to get more training for something, gunnery or some skill that you really didn't have. And I think the Navy was quite good at their training facilities. And they did that pretty far out here.
When y'all escorted a ship, how far away was your ship from that ship? As in, was it 1,000 yards away, or?
Yeah, something like 1,000, I guess. I don't know exactly, but that was our job to just keep a certain distance from that. And we had zigzag patterns, as I say. They did too, and we would all zig at the same time, hopefully, and zag at the same time, hopefully. I think we had our zigzag pattern was pattern L. You look up in a book and they would tell you, go so many knots at this speed for this distance, and then turn, give you another bearing, and so forth. But that was sort of dull duty, you know. The crewmen, as you had this, they would just seem like they were always chipping and painting. When you were at sea, while the salt, would get on the ship and cause a lot of rust, and usually the regular crew would be chipping and painting over these spots. Just a normal sort of flow, except for special, like our people that were recording the Pearl Harbor messages. And let's see.
So when you went to Okinawa, you said you went in on Love -10.
Yeah.
And how long did you stay? How long were you outside during that battle? Did you ever go on Okinawa?
No. We might have gone and put our foot in one little place on Okinawa, but it was not the place to be. I didn't know it, but we found out later how rough that battle was on the land. When we all landed, this surprising to me, looking at the map, is how close Okinawa was to Japan itself. And of course, these Japanese were just fanatic about protecting their homeland, and you know, this is part of the reason for the strong resistance when we landed to take Okinawa.
And the reason for the
It's just
kamikazes.
we're protecting the homeland,
Mhm.
because they were so close to the homeland. I don't think we knew while we were there how close that was to Japan. Later, if you look at the map, it is quite close to Japan.
So after Okinawa, where did you go? Where did you?
After Okinawa, we were assigned to come back to Portland, Oregon. First of all, to come back to Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
And then we were assigned to go to Portland, Oregon for overhaul. While we were tied up in Portland, Oregon, the atomic bombs went off and we had peace, and the ship that we were going to overhaul was decommissioned.
What do you mean by overhaul?
Well, they would always something goes wrong with any ship, and they would usually make a list of things that needed to be done. In many cases, they would come into a dry dock. Dry dock were two kinds of dry docks. One is you'd have your ship enter a closed area, which it was then pumped out so that the ship was sitting high and dry,
Okay.
and you could get to the bottom and get the bottom scraped and do other repair work, that kind of thing. They also had a floating dock of dry dock. You would go into that, and then the sides of it were hollow and would be pumped out, and this would raise that ship and your ship up so that it was dry and you could get to the bottom. Well, I guess a lot of the overhaul was just the bottom work. I mean, making sure that the bottom particles were taken off the ship, plus other things too.
Do you remember where you were when you heard that the war was over?
Yeah, let's see. Portland, Oregon. I was home. We had a period there of maybe 30 days or something like that. That was just sort of a stand-down thing. The commanding officer wanted at least half of the officers on board available at all times. So we divided the officers into 3 groups. One, the older ones that had more seniority, and they got 2 weeks leave. Those of us who were sort of middle in there got a week and a half, and those that had not been very long got 1 week. I might have these links wrong, and maybe were longer than that. At any rate, I then came back to Spartanburg during that period of time.
Did you come back by train?
Heaven no. Oh, I came back by Naval Air Transport Service. And on the way back to the ship, I went and they had a ferry command that came through Spartanburg, landed at Spartanburg's airport, and you could, if you were lucky, hit some of these planes that were being uh, flown to the West Coast for the thing. And I did. There were 2 planes flew in. I had to rent a parachute, which I sat on. And these were SB-2C dive bombers. And we took off from Spartanburg, and I don't know, the first night was somewhere in Mississippi, maybe in Fort Worth, Texas was a stop.
So you flew in a dive bomber.
Yeah, these were dive bombers, and one of them decided he was going to dive on something without saying anything to me. He just dove on this lake or something or other. Everything's fine until he starts pulling out, and all the blood runs out of you. You pretty well almost faint coming out of this dive bomber. But at any rate, that was a fun time.
So you were at home when you heard that the war was over?
Yeah, that's right. I was at home when the war is over, and of course we happened to be a few Navy men, Army men, just don't leave at that time, and we had a big parade, and you know, it was a lot of fun.
And were you planning, right before that, were you planning on going back into the Pacific and going back over and helping with the invasion of Japan?
Yeah, we, of course, I guess it was after that the war the ship was decided to be closed. I was then decommissioned. I was sent along with other officers to Seattle, a holding place there, until I got orders to go to Pearl Harbor and pick up another ship, which is an APD, which was a larger ship than a destroyer escort. It had landing craft on board and this kind of thing. Picked this up in Pearl Harbor. We went down through the Panama Canal. We went to Boston, of all things, to be overhauled. The war's over, I don't know why. But we went to Boston, and we were overhauled. I got through the overhaul in Boston and headed toward Green Cove Springs, which is on the St. Johns River near Jacksonville. Now, this is the end of the war, so the senior officers would start leaving. They'd served their time, they were leaving. And I got to be a senior watch officer. I got to be a senior watch officer. Then later an executive officer. You know, it just there wasn't anybody left. We pulled into Green Cove Springs, Florida, which of course is fresh water. And I was executive officer of this ship. We had a captain, thank goodness, that was an old salt, knew what he was doing, but you know, some of us were. I was one of the older ones on duty at that point. This ship was then tied up in a group of ships, and just I don't know what they finally did with them. I guess scrapped to these ships eventually.
And then you were discharged?
Hmm?
And then you were discharged after this? Or
yeah, while I was down there, I was discharged. Just discharged, Naval Air Station, Jacksonville. And discharged and came back to civilian life.
How was that? Was it a lot different coming back?
It worked out fine. I applied for a job at Milliken, Judson Mills in Milliken, and it was just at the time that Roger Milliken was moving south and trying to get control of these 14 mills at that time that they were the sales agent for, and Larry Milliken had control of these mills. He had the the voting stock, and it was only later that Roger Milliken came up and made an offer for all the stock in all the mills, and really got it together. But his first move was to set up a Dairy, Milliken Industrial Engineering Department at Judson Mills in Greenville, and I was part of that. So I was at the beginning of sort of a movement toward consolidation, which was nice.
Well, Mr. Wardlaw, thank you so much for your time and your service for our country.
Well, hope it works.
Great job.